EVO.
Welcome back to the Ides of April. Last episode, we closed the book on the rise of Robert F. Kennedy, his unlikely evolution from political enforcer to moral compass, his frontline role during the Cuban Missile Crisis, the fracture of 1963 in Dallas, and the haunted, sharpened figure who emerged from grief to become the frontrunner in the 1968 presidential race. We left him in the center of a fractured America. Cities burning, Vietnam spiraling, MLK assassinated only 2 months earlier, and millions of Americans, black, white, Latino, native, poor, disenfranchised, idealistic, believing that Bobby Kennedy might be the last figure able to stitch the nation back together. Now, we arrive at the place where that hope met its violent end. Los Angeles, 1968, the Ambassador Hotel, election night. But before we enter the kitchen pantry, we step into the city itself, the sprawling, sun-bleached, cinematic landscape that shaped the final hours of RFK's life. And as we do, we borrow a voice the Kennedys themselves cherished. Robert Frost. He was JFK's favorite poet, and later quoted often by Bobby himself. Frost once wrote, "The afternoon knows what the morning never suspected." There could hardly be a line more fitting for June 5th, 1968. This is Chapter 4, The Ambassador Hotel and a Country on the Brink. Welcome back to the Ides of April. Previously, we traced the rise of Robert F. Kennedy, from the bruising ambition of the Kennedy dynasty, through the crucible of the Cuban Missile Crisis, to the grief-forged evolution that transformed him into the unlikely moral compass of a nation in revolt. We followed his 1968 campaign as it surged across an America unraveling at the seams. An America haunted by the deaths of his brother Jack, Malcolm X, and Martin Luther King Jr. An America fighting in the jungles of Vietnam and burning in the streets of Detroit, Newark, D.C., and Los Angeles. By the time RFK arrived in California, he wasn't just a candidate. He had become a vessel for a kind of desperate national hope. The belief that someone, anyone, might still be able to pull the country back from the ledge. And now we arrive at the last city he would ever visit, a city both shining and rotting, glamorous and violent, fractured and alive. Los Angeles, 1968, the final stage. Long before it became the site of a national tragedy, the Ambassador Hotel was a palace built for the mythology of Los Angeles. Opened in 1921, it sat like a sunlit kingdom on Wilshire Boulevard. Spanish Revival architecture, manicured gardens, a pool that mirrored the sky, and palm trees standing like sentries along its perimeter. It was glamorous without apology, swaggering in a city that was still figuring out what glamour meant. The Coconut Grove, its nightclub, was once the beating heart of Hollywood nightlife. Sinatra crooned there. Fitzgerald drank himself sideways there. Stars danced under papier-mâché palm fronds and soft orange lanterns that pretended to be moonlight. By the mid-1960s, the Grove was past its prime. Old Hollywood was dying, Vine Street had wrinkles, studio contracts had lost their magic. Los Angeles was shifting into something harder, something darker and more chaotic. But the Ambassador, even faded, carried the scent of a bygone age, the illusion of order in a city built on reinvention. RFK chose the Ambassador as his California campaign headquarters, not because it was glamorous, but because it had history, because it had space, and because it had a ballroom large enough to fit possibility. Because the kitchen corridors were an efficient way to move a candidate from speech to supporters without drowning him in the crush. And maybe, though no one said it out loud, because tragedies always seek stages. In 1968, Los Angeles was a city of sharp contradictions. Hollywood was still exporting glitter, but the city beneath the chiffon was fraying. Racial tension was simmering, police violence was rising, inequality was metastasizing. Watts was only 3 years removed from its uprising, the ashes barely cold. Gang activity was rising in East LA, the counterculture was spreading across the hills. The Manson family, not yet infamous, lurked at the edge of the city's psychic perimeter. Same city, two realities. Palm trees in the day, patrol sirens at night. RFK understood this duality instinctively. He visited neighborhoods no other candidate bothered with. He walked through Watts, speaking softly, but listening closely. He met farm workers in Delano. He went to college campuses where students wept after MLK's death and begged him to fix what America had broken. He quoted his favorite poet, Aeschylus, to crowds still bleeding from 1968's wounds. In our sleep, pain which cannot forget falls drop by drop upon the heart until, in our own despair, against our own will, comes wisdom through the awful grace of God. He recited that again in Indianapolis on the night King was shot, and again in small gatherings when despair threatened to drown reason. He carried Aeschylus like a talisman, something to hold on to when America's violence rose like a tide. And here in Los Angeles, the city of reinvention, he arrived with the desperate hope of reinventing the country. California wasn't just a state, it was the state, the crucible, the hinge point. When California, RFK had momentum, something more powerful than delegates, more powerful than endorsements. He had the story. He controlled the narrative. He had the wind at his back. His wife Ethel joined him in Los Angeles, 8 months pregnant, staying at the Beverly Hills Hotel, the pink palace of movie stars and political royalty. The same place Marilyn Monroe had lived in long stretches. The same place RFK now used as a base in the final sprint toward victory. While he campaigned across the state, visiting barrios, union halls, churches, universities, Ethel prepared for a night that every supporter believed would be triumphant. The Ambassador Ballroom swelled with thousands of people, college students, farm workers, black voters, Latino voters, union organizers, Hollywood liberals, exhausted campaign staffers, and families who had never attended a political rally before, but said they came because he listens. RFK's presence electrified the whole city. Even those who didn't support him could feel the momentum. The Kennedy energy, younger, more hopeful, more urgent, felt like something the country had been starved of since Dallas. John Glenn, Rayford Johnson, Dolores Huerta, the coalition was enormous, diverse, and fiercely loyal. And as the returns came in from San Francisco, San Diego, and LA County, the truth became impossible to ignore. He was winning. He had done it. Robert F. Kennedy had won California. And in the ballroom of the Ambassador Hotel, the crowd began to swell and pulse, a living organism convinced that history was being written in real time. What no one in the ballroom realized, not Bobby, not Ethel in her suite at the Beverly Hills Hotel, not the supporters chanting his name, not the journalists sharpening their leads, was that another young immigrant was only miles away, moving through the city with a notebook filled with rage and a revolver hidden under his jacket. Sirhan Bishara Sirhan, 24 years old, a Palestinian immigrant radicalized by the geopolitics of the Middle East, the trauma of war, and a fixation on RFK that had metastasized into something lethal. He'd been studying the senator's movements for days, practicing at a shooting range, writing the same chilling line in a spiral-bound notebook. RFK must die. RFK must die. He was already inside the Ambassador Hotel by the time RFK finished his victory speech, already in position, already waiting in the kitchen pantry, already writing the final punctuation mark on the American 1960s. Chapter 5. Sirhan Sirhan, The Making of an Assassin. Sirhan Sirhan was born in 1944 in Jerusalem, during a period when the city existed less as a place and more as a pressure point. His earliest memories were not of family dinners on warm evenings or the ordinary innocence of childhood, but of tanks, gunfire, soldiers, and the charged air of a place collapsing into war. He grew up amid turmoil: the Arab-Israeli conflict, the British withdrawal, the 1948 war, the displacement of families, the instability that rewrites childhood development at the cellular level. Sirhan saw violence not as an aberration, but just as environment. When your home is contested ground, your worldview becomes contested ground as well. By the early 1950s, his family had emigrated to the United States. A new language, a new country, a new attempt at normalcy. But Sirhan struggled. School was difficult, money was scarce, and identity was complex. His father's temper was unpredictable. His mother was devout but exhausted. Sirhan was small, he was quiet, he was insecure, the kind of boy who feels the world looking past him. He drifted through his teenage years in Pasadena and Alhambra, working odd jobs, taking up short-lived hobbies, eventually working at a racetrack. People who knew him described him as polite, soft-spoken, sometimes childlike, sometimes agitated, often lonely. And yet nothing about Sirhan's youth would have singled him out as a future assassin. The seeds were far subtler than that. The real turning point came in 1967 after Israel's victory in the Six-Day War. To understand Sirhan's radicalization, you have to understand how that moment landed among Arab immigrants. For many, the war wasn't a distant geopolitical event. It was personal. It was existential. It was family land lost, ancestral roots severed. A devastating humiliation underlined by the way American media loudly celebrated Israel's decisive win. Sirhan watched this unfold with increasing anger. Anger that found no outlet, no community, no mentor to steer it into anything but obsession. He absorbed political rhetoric, anti-Israel sentiment, conspiracy theories. Rage became his compass. He began drinking to excess. He bounced between beliefs, including brief flirtations with mysticism and the occult. He filled notebooks with rambling political grievances, some coherent, most incoherent. Most chilling were the pages written almost like prayers or curses, repeated dozens of times. Robert F. Kennedy must be assassinated before June 5th. That last line wasn't random. June 5th marked the anniversary of the Six-Day War. To Sirhan, symbolism mattered. Dates mattered. Artistic symmetry mattered. He wanted to kill RFK not just as an act of political violence, but as a kind of ritualistic inversion, a tragic, dark form of poetic justice. And that poetic impulse, misguided, inflammatory, and dangerous, mirrored the darker edges of that line by Robert Frost that the Kennedys love and that you know I love. Nothing gold can stay. To Sirhan, RFK represented a political structure supporting the nation he felt had destroyed his childhood world. To America, RFK represented hope. And the collision soon became inevitable. But obsession alone does not create an assassin. The plan required practice. Sirhan visited shooting ranges repeatedly in the weeks leading up to the California primary. At times, he was described as calm, almost serene. At other times, jumpy and reactive, paranoid. His accuracy was mediocre, but his resolve wasn't. On June 5th, 1968, RFK won the California Democratic primary. While Kennedy celebrated with supporters at the Ambassador Hotel, Sirhan moved through the same building quietly, unnoticed amid the swelling crowds, the journalists, the campaign workers, and the young idealists who believed, despite everything, that a better America was still possible. Sirhan drank that night. Whiskey. Enough to blur self-preservation, but not enough to blur intent. He wandered the hotel ballroom. He asked people where Kennedy might walk after his speech. He watched the press handlers. He memorized the exits. Now, the Ambassador was a maze of curtains, of service corridors, and aging architecture. But Sirhan gravitated toward the kitchen pantry, a narrow, fluorescent-lit choke point connecting the ballroom to the press area. It was cramped, it was crowded, and it was exactly the kind of place where a man with a gun could get within arm's reach of a presidential candidate. Sirhan stood near an ice machine, pretending to wait for something. The revolver was tucked into his waistband. He was calm, almost still. Meanwhile, upstairs, RFK was giving his victory speech. On to Chicago. The words should have been triumphant. The words that ended his life. RFK stepped off the stage. Campaign staff rerouted him against better judgment through the pantry, hoping to save time. The crowd parted in the tight corridor, and Sirhan stepped forward. He extended the revolver. He fired 8 shots. The first 2 struck RFK behind the ear and in the neck. 5 others hit bystanders. The 8th ricocheted. Chaos devoured the small room. Kennedy fell. Sirhan was tackled, pinned, nearly beaten to death by onlookers who knew exactly what they had just witnessed. The gun was pried from his hand. Flashbulbs lit the scene like lightning. RFK, still conscious for a moment, whispered, "Is everyone all right?" Sirhan said nothing. He fought, he smiled, and he went blank. He had done the thing he believed history would recognize him for. A warped sense of purpose fulfilled. In the end, Sirhan was less an agent of strategy and more an instrument of grievance, shaped by displacement, anger, political naivety, and a swelling ideology he barely understood, yet felt completely consumed by. He didn't know the man he killed. He only knew the symbol. And he believed that striking the symbol would rewrite the world. Instead, it ended an era.
Our dogs are family, and they deserve food that treats them that way. That's why Ollie makes meals with fresh, human-grade ingredients you can actually recognize. Chicken, beef, carrots, blueberries, spinach, no fillers, no byproducts, just real nutrition slow-cooked to keep your pup healthy and energized. Shinier coats, better digestion, more energy, and with 5 protein-packed flavors like beef with sweet potatoes or turkey with blueberries, your dog may be eating better than you. Every plan is customized to your dog's age, breed, and activity level, and delivered right to your door in perfectly portioned, easy-to-serve packs. Simple, fresh, and made just for them. Now here's how you can try it. Your dog's well-being starts with their food, and that's why Ollie delivers fresh, human-grade food that your dog will love. Head to ollie.com/ides. Tell them all about your dog and use code IDES to get 60% off your welcome kit when you subscribe today. Plus, they offer a happiness guarantee on the first box, so if you're not completely satisfied, you'll get your money back. That's OLLIE.com/IDES and enter code IDES to get 60% off your first box. Most people can't name every financial account they have or what any of them are really worth. A 401k here, an old brokerage there, a few credit cards, maybe a forgotten savings account. It's a kind of financial fog, and it's costing people money. Monarch cuts through that fog. It's an all-in-one personal finance platform that brings your entire financial life together, cleanly, clearly, and instantly on your laptop or your phone. Link your accounts in minutes, see where your money's actually going, and take control of it. Monarch does the heavy lifting. Smart categorization, powerful visuals, and planning tools trusted by professionals. It's been named Best Budgeting App of 2025 by The Wall Street Journal, Forbes' Best App for Couples, and listed among CNBC's top fintech companies in the world. Don't let financial opportunity slip through the cracks. Use code IDES at monarch.com in your browser for half off your first year. That's 50% off your first year at monarch.com with code IDES.
Chapter 6. The Night the Promise Died. History rarely announces when an era is ending. Most of the time, it slips away quietly. Papers shuffled, lights dimmed, a door locking behind the last person who remembers how it used to feel. But on the night of June 5th, 1968, history didn't slip. It collapsed. It bled. It cried out in a crowded kitchen pantry of the Ambassador Hotel in LA. where the walls still carry an echo if you listen long enough. On this generation of Americans falls the full burden of proving to the world that we really mean that all men are created free and equal. RFK had spoken those words just days before. Hours later, he lay on the sticky tile floor, his breath coming in short, incredulous bursts, as if his body refused to admit that hope itself could be shot. Previously, we followed the trajectory of a nation unspooling. Martin Luther King had been assassinated only 63 days earlier. Malcolm X had fallen before him. JFK 5 years before that. And yet, miraculously, America had found one last voice capable of bridging the divides between rich and poor, black and white, young and old, war-weary and war-wed. Robert Kennedy wasn't simply a candidate. He was a possibility. The last one many Americans believed that they had left. And that belief walked with him into the Ambassador Hotel. The ballroom that night was electric. Reporters crushed against each other like birds in a storm. Campaign workers, exhausted, hopeful, euphoric, lined the walls. Supporters hoisted children onto their shoulders so they could say one day that they'd seen him. California had been a critical prize of 1968, a state torn between the Nixon machine, the fractured Democratic Party, and the rising anti-war movement. Kennedy's victory there wasn't just a primary win. It was a signal flare in the darkness. Bobby stepped up to the podium just after midnight. His voice was hoarse, but warm. I think we could end the divisions within the United States. We can start to work together again. Applause, cheers, a roar so hopeful that it felt fragile. And then with the casual innocence of a man unaware that destiny has already drawn its curtain, he ended with, "So my thanks to all of you, and now it's on to Chicago, and let's win there." The room erupted. Chicago would never come. Kennedy's staff planned to lead him through a service corridor, the so-called shortcut that was never meant to be an exit. The Secret Service was not protecting presidential candidates in 1968. Campaigns designed their own routes, often at the mercy of hotel layouts and crowd control. The Ambassador Hotel, once the crown jewel of mid-century glamour, had aged into a labyrinth of hallways and back rooms, dim-lit service passages. The Coconut Grove nightclub still whispered of Sinatra and old Hollywood, but behind the public facade, the hotel was a tangle of steel doors and weary fluorescent bulbs. As Bobby walked into the pantry, the crowd pressed forward to shake his hand. Workers in aprons, busboys, volunteers, young people with tears in their eyes. And in that crush of bodies stood a man who had rehearsed his movements so many times they no longer felt like choices. Sirhan Bishara Sirhan, 24 years old, a man whose trauma had calcified into obsession, whose political fury had narrowed until it took the shape of a single target. He stepped forward, raised a .22 caliber revolver, and fired. Chaos didn't begin immediately. There's always a second, just a second, where disbelief holds the world still. But then the room cracked. Screams tore through the corridor. Kennedy fell backwards, collapsing into the arms of busboy Juan Romero, who cradled the senator's head as blood soaked the white tile beneath him. Romero later said he felt something leave Bobby, like warmth or grace or a presence, something indescribable, but still unmistakable. 5 others were hit in the spray of bullets, but the room's gravity pulled toward the single fallen figure, the one whose loss would echo across continents. Journalist Pete Hamill knelt beside him. Bobby's lips moved. And again, he whispered, "Is everybody all right?" Whether or not he actually said that is less important than the gesture. Even as he died, Kennedy reached outward, not inward. That was the shape of his politics and the shape of his soul. His wife Ethel, pregnant with their 11th child, had been staying earlier that evening at the Beverly Hills Hotel. She arrived at Good Samaritan Hospital to the sterile hum of fluorescent lights and the grim choreography of emergency medicine. Behind closed doors, surgeons worked to remove the bullet lodged behind his brain, but they couldn't. At 1:44 a.m. on June 6, 1968, Robert Francis Kennedy was pronounced dead. Another poet once favored by the Kennedys, Alfred Lord Tennyson, wrote, "But oh, for the touch of a vanished hand and the sound of a voice that is still." In 1968, America was a nation of vanished hands and stilled voices. JFK, Malcolm X, Dr. King, and now Bobby, 4 assassinations in 5 years, each removing not just a leader, but an idea. For Black America, Bobby had been a rare politician who walked in their neighborhoods, shook their hands, listened. For the poor, he had been a man willing to kneel on dirt floors and speak without condescension. For young Americans disillusioned by Vietnam, he'd been the first candidate who seemed to see them as human beings rather than demographics. His death wasn't just a political tragedy, it was a spiritual one. The last national figure capable of holding together the frayed moral threads of the 1960s had been cut down. America didn't break that night, it had already been breaking, but this moment, this was the moment that people felt it snap. 2 days later, Bobby's body was placed aboard a train bound for Washington, D.C. Over 100,000 mourners lined the tracks. Black families in their Sunday clothes, white working men with hard hats removed, young mothers holding children, veterans, priests, teenagers with RFK buttons pinned like talismans. Some wept openly, some saluted, some simply stood, silent, as if watching the coffin pass might steady their own unraveling faith. And again, Tennyson drifted on the American wind. And slowly answered Arthur from the barge, "The old order changeth, yielding place to new." But in 1968, the new order had not yet arrived. Only the void. The night Robert F. Kennedy was shot, something far larger than a campaign ended. It was the final extinguishing of a particular American dream. The belief that compassion could triumph within power, that moral courage could steer the nation toward justice, that someone might rise to heal the wounds inflicted by war, by racism, poverty, division. In that kitchen pantry, America didn't lose its innocence. It lost its memory of what hope felt like, and perhaps its last great practitioner of it. Because after Bobby fell, the country did not slide into the future. It staggered, and it's never fully regained its footing. Follow us on Instagram at the Ides of April Pod and at EVO Creative. Subscribe on Apple Podcasts, on Spotify, or wherever you're listening right now. Leave a rating and review. It really helps the show grow by helping other people discover it. And share this episode with someone you know who loves history or politics or true crime narratives. And please don't forget to check the show notes for great deals from the great companies that still support long-form storytelling. Quince, luxury essentials at affordable prices. Go to quince.com/devilwithin for free shipping and 365-day returns. Mint Mobile, premium wireless for $15 a month. Go to mintmobile.com/devilwithin. ExpressVPN, protect your data anywhere. expressvpn.com/devilwithin for up to 4 months free. Mood, THC and CBD gummies legally shipped nationwide. Go to mood.com/devilwithin for 20% off your first order. Ollie Dog Food, fresh, personalized dog meals. Go to ollie.com/ides for 60% off your first box. And Monarch, the all-in-one personal finance app. Go to monarch.com/ides for up to 60% off your first year. The Ides of April is an EVO production, recorded live at Bel Air Studios in Los Angeles, California. For EVO Creative, I'm your writer and host, Brandon Morgan.